All right, we are live. I'm going to share this because this is very impromptu. Hopefully, you guys can hear me. I did not check the audio settings. So I will definitely do that here in a second. Hey, Ashley. Good to see you. All right, let me see. Okay, it looks like it's working. Let me know if it's not. It looks like it's going on. Let me know if you cannot hear me. Okay, this is super impromptu. I am just winging it. I don't have an outline because life is crazy. um, Yesterday I taught my Wednesday lessons yesterday because one of my aunts died. So I have her funeral to go to tomorrow. So I taught my tomorrow lessons yesterday. And then afterwards, we went to Peoria for our annual Christmas thing, Christmas lights, all that good stuff. So we went there, did not get home till 8 or 9. And now then I taught all day today and dropped Allie off for driver's ed and came right over here and only have a little bit of time until I have to pick up Allie. So I thought I would just talk about this subject. I was thinking about how fast, things have gone this year and just how it's crazy that it's almost the end of 2025, right? Around the time that we get used to writing 2025, it's the new year. So we have 2026 in just a couple weeks. And I thought about this. I was thinking about this subject, just about thinking back on my life and thinking how far I've come as a Christian, how far I've come as a wife, how far I've come as a mom, and thinking along these lines of New Year's resolutions and things that are coming up, right? And one of the annoying things, I'm going to say it's annoying. Don't get mad at me. My hair's bugging me. But one of the annoying things about going to the gym year round is that when you go to the gym in January, especially the first 2 or 3 weeks, it is packed. It's packed like crazy. And it's a little bit, I wish these people, and it's new faces, like, you kind of go to the gym and you kind of see regular people there all the time. And I want to tell these people, okay, just stick with this for the whole year. If you stick with it the whole year, you're going to see massive changes and it's going to be good, right? And just stick with it. But usually after 2 or 3 weeks, everyone's done and they're not even trying to stay with their New Year's resolution. And then they just go back to whatever they were doing before, which is normally nothing. So I was thinking along these lines of just in our own personal lives, how are we bettering ourselves in all these different areas? And I don't have an outline, so I'm just going to speak from the heart again, like my van videos, and just kind of go over some ways that we can try to better ourselves in 2026 and then hopefully every year after that. Because for me, I am not content with one, staying the same, and two, backsliding. I'm not content in any of those areas. And when I say backsliding, I'm not just talking about getting weaker in my relationship with the Lord. I'm talking about getting weaker in any area of life, whether that's with my friendships, whether that's my relationship with my husband, my relationship with my kids, my relationship with people in my church. I don't want to go backwards. I want things to always be getting better. And I'm all about like reading. I like reading psychology books. I like reading different books that are like self-help books and just showing you better ways to do things, right? So like better ways to run your home, better ways to communicate with other people, better ways to work on your relationships, That's how I am. I think it's part of that like type A personality trait, firstborn daughter type thing in me. But I'm all about becoming better, finding better ways to relate to people, to talk to people, to communicate with people. And hey, Sarah. So this is very near and dear to my heart because I'm not content with the status quo. I'm not content with being a miserable person. I'm not content with having weak friendships. I'm not content with having a weak marriage. I'm not content with having weak relationships with my kids. So these are all areas that I'm working on a constant basis. So, along these lines, I was thinking number one, obviously, our walk with the Lord. How can we better ourselves in 2026 when it comes to our walk with Christ? So, number one, I'm going to say if you don't have a church or a church family, my suggestion is that you definitely get into church because if you're not in church, you're not surrounded with people who are working towards the same goals as you, you're going to kind of be on an island and you're going to be a loner. And that's when the devil's going to attack. You know, the devil, it's just like in nature when you've got prides of like lions that are going around hunting, they don't go for big packs of animals. They try to look at the stragglers, like the weak ones, the ones by themselves. And then that's when they go in for the kill. And it's the same way in life. You know, numbers help make us stronger, and fellowship helps, you know, sharpen us as believers in Christ. So if you don't have a church, that is the number one priority. Now, I know some of my listeners live in different countries, and there is a very scarce amount of churches. Now, I will say, even our friends who are in Ireland have found a Baptist church, and Baptist churches are kind of rare in Ireland. It's mainly like Catholic and Protestant. And so it is rare. And I will say most of the Baptist churches in Ireland are Baptist missionaries from the States. And that tends to be a lot of like, even when we went to Hawaii, we went to a church on a Wednesday night and we had found an IFB church, and it was from someone who had moved from America, the mainland, because Hawaii is considered America too, but the mainland, they call it. You know, it's someone who moved from the mainland to the island, the big island of Hawaii, the one actually named Hawaii. So it was someone, and they had told us, they said our kids weren't very happy that we moved here because it's, you know, far away. It's an 8-hour flight, 8 or 9 hour flight from the United States mainland to get to this island of Hawaii. So you know, that's that was started by someone not native to the big island of Hawaii. And you'll find that with churches in England, oftentimes it's someone. And now I firmly believe it's better to have, especially in a country where it's a foreign tongue, it's better to have people that are that nationality and know the language, you know, to head up something. Because oftentimes we had friends from Poland, and they were telling us about how the Polish language is very difficult. And oftentimes when an American tries to teach themselves Polish, they'll get a lot of things mixed up. Or like they'll come across as humorous when it's not supposed to be humorous. You know, Marta could correct me if she's watching, but yeah, they told us that the Polish language is very difficult, and for that reason I think it would be great if there was a native Polish speaker who was able to start a church, and then because they're already acclimated to the culture and the customs and the language. But all that to say, normally whatever country you're in, you can find a Baptist church to be a part of. Obviously, I'm going to say Baptist because I do think the reason I'm still Baptists have their problems just like everyone else, but the reason I'm still Baptist, still consider myself independent fundamental or independent Baptist, is because I do believe that scripturally, they are the ones that line up the most. My husband has often said, if there's another group or another denomination, if you want to call it that, that is more closely lined up to the word of God, then he would be a part of that. But he still believes that Baptist is the closest to the word of God. And I agree with him on that area. So that's why we're still Baptist. But oftentimes, you know, you can go to Military Got Saved, I think is what it's called, to search for Baptist churches in different countries. in different states, and you need to be plugged in to a Baptist church. I've had women reach out to my husband, the same thing. We've had people reach out for advice, and it's really tough to give advice just hearing about one side of the story and one situation when we don't know you in depth. There's something about going to church with people where they really get to know you, and they know your personality, and they know your quirks. They know what you struggle with. They know your strengths. They know your weaknesses. And that's why oftentimes some of the best people to get advice from are those in your church, your pastor and his wife, other godly laymen in the church. That's why it's good to get advice from people who know you personally, because they're going to know all the ins and outs of whatever situation that you're going through. And they can't know that if you're never around. So I would say, number one, you need to get in a good church. Number two, you need to study the Bible for yourself. Don't go off of AI. That seems to be the new big thing right now, ChatGPT. Don't go off of AI. Don't go off of just Googling things. You need to get the Bible out, and you need to dig in it yourself. You need to read chapters, and not just read. You need to apply them to your life. There's a head knowledge, yes, but there's also a heart knowledge, and taking what you've read from the Word of God and applying it to your life. You can have all the facts, and you can you can quote Bible verses, but yet if you don't apply them in your life, it's not going to matter. It's not going to help. So get into church, read your Bible, start saying no to your flesh. Say no to your flesh more in 2026 than you did in 2025. And this might be just identifying things that are a struggle for you. Okay. So do you struggle with being on your phone constantly throughout the day? Well, then you need to put guidelines in your life, or restrictions, or set a timer on your phone, or have your phone turn off. Like once you get to a certain amount of screen time, you can put parameters in place where it'll shut it off. Not the entire phone, but just like apps and stuff. So I have a cold right now. Mainly the only time that I struggle is at night, but I also struggle when I talk a lot. So put some guidelines and boundaries in your life when it comes to that. And then also, so get in a good church, read your Bible, identify your weaknesses and try to get better in that. Maybe you have a weakness when it comes to different food. Maybe you're addicted to sugar. That could become a stumbling block in your life. If you start gaining a ton of weight and it starts prohibiting you from doing different activities that you need when you serve the Lord, such as, soul winning. So you're walking a lot, you can't even walk, different things like that. You can start weeding those things out and getting better in that area. Most Americans don't know how to fast. And the Bible does talk a lot about fasting. Now, for those of you that watch my show, if you are nursing or pregnant, this doesn't apply to you. Your main concern is nurturing that growing child or nurturing that nursing baby. So this doesn't apply to you. But if you are between nursing or being pregnant, or, you have older kids, I would definitely recommend fasting. It is something where you grow to understand your body and its weaknesses. And it is, you are in a weakened state physically. And so you are more apt to pray a lot more, depend on the Lord more, really watch your emotions and kind of, just see what kind of controls you, and food does have a very powerful effect. And most Americans can't go a day without eating. This is actually something that I've developed in my own life. When I was younger, I could not even imagine going a day without eating, but I've done 2 separate 10-day fasts now, where I just use a little bit of, it's the lemonade fasting thing, where you do lemonade, cayenne pepper, and maple syrup as your form of calories, but then you also do saltwater flushes, but it's just no food, no food at all. So I've done 2 different 10-day fasts like that, and then another 5-day fast like that. So I've gotten to where I can build up my time. And for me, it's like a personal thing. I want to know that I can do it. Right. So that is one thing that I've done in my own life, just kind of to push things and see my weaknesses and see how I respond. I don't really get hangry. I can deal with hunger pretty well, but it's through years of just starting to implement fasting and stuff into my own life. So, um, but yeah, work on your relationship with the Lord. Let's be better in 2026. Let's be better at reading the Bible. Let's be better at praying. Let's be better at dying to the flesh. Let's be better at walking in the spirit than we were in 2025. So then I thought of this subject too. How can we better ourselves when it comes to our relationship with our husbands? And I don't consider a successful marriage one that's just they've stayed together like for 25, 30, 40, 50 years. Were they happy during that time? Did they have a thriving marriage? Not just a marriage where they put up with each other and just muddled through each day. So for me, I want to have a happy marriage. And that, for me, that is the most important relationship in my life on here on earth after Jesus Christ is my husband, my relationship with my husband. So when things are off between me and my husband, it affects a lot of different other areas of my life. And it's hard for me to really have the positive energy and devote the time I need to these other aspects if my relationship with him is off. So it is very rare that it's off. Obviously, we're going to have times, busy seasons, and things can, you just muddle through where you have to. But if that is a pattern all the time, I need something to change. So that might mean cutting back on outside activities. That might mean even just checks and balances with my children, because my husband has always come first. The other day we were eating supper and I always get his plate first. That's what I've done since the first day that we got married. I always get his plate first and give it to him. And Kelly asked, she's like, why does dad always get his food first? And I said, well, it's because he's the man of the house and he pays the bills. And I want to make sure that he gets food before everyone else gets food, because there's a lot of kids in this family and you guys will be like little grasshoppers and eat all the food before he even gets a chance. So, but your kids notice stuff like that. They notice if you're putting your husband first and his needs first and different things like that. So I've always gotten his food first. And it was funny because Kelly finally noticed it the other day. So I have put my relationship with him before that of my children. And that might be controversial to some, but it's not to me, because once my children are grown and gone, it's just my husband and I. And if we have let that relationship deteriorate over the years, and it's easy to do if you don't pay attention to it, it does take work. It does take maintenance. It does take, just really intentional purpose to make that strong in your life. And so if you have let that completely deteriorate by the time the kids grow up and are gone, then that's not very happy. It's not a very happy life. You should be at the point, like for me personally, because my husband and I have both been very focused on keeping our marriage the best relationship in our life. We're at the age where it's so much fun now, and there's like so much depth to it, because our kids are getting more self-reliant. Now we still have some little ones, but our older ones are more self-reliant, and now we're getting grandkids and we're having kids get married and all this stuff. So I feel like we're personally like in the best part of our marriage. It's like the most fun. We get to go on dates more. We get to have more activities that we do together. We're so connected. We know each other so well. We know our likes and our dislikes and all of that. So we're a really, really fun spot in our life. And unfortunately, you'll see that those who don't focus on that relationship in their life, their kids get older and they leave and they look at each other and they're like, I don't even know you. Like, I don't know who you are anymore, and they end up getting divorced. Actually, a lot of people that are in their 40s, early 50s, that's when they get divorced. And to me, that's so sad, because I'm like at the best point so far. And I wish everyone could have that. And then just throw away a decade, 2 decades, 3 decades of marriage, it's really sad. So you've got to be intentional. How do you speak to your husband? How do you speak to your husband in front of people? How do you speak to your husband in front of your kids? How do you speak to your husband when you're at home? How do you speak to him in private? If that that's an area, and we know ourselves the best. So just be honest with yourself. Where am I lacking? Where can I be better? Where can I better myself in 2026? Um, if you get short with your husband, if you get irritated, if you snap at him, if you're mean, the things that you say to your friends in private. So you need to just acknowledge that, hey, this is a weak spot in my life and I need to work on it. I need to work at being kinder. I need to work at respecting him in front of other people. I need to work at not putting him down in front of the kids because however you talk about him, that is going to go into your kid's brain and that's how they're going to think of their dad. Okay. So you have to be very intentional to be very, very nice. Now, sometimes I feel like I did too good at this because I get ganged up on. Like, dad can do no wrong when it comes to, especially my girls. And so oftentimes, if it's like we're trying just something fun, hey, do you want to do this or do you want to do that? Well, what does dad want? Whatever dad wants, that's what we want. I'm like, hey, what about mom? So, dad is definitely a favorite in our home, especially with the girls. There's just something special about that daddy daughter relationship type thing. So, but yeah, I would say definitely acknowledge that you might have weak spots when it comes to this. How is your physical relationship with your husband? That's super important. And the Bible talks about not defrauding each other, and that works both ways. So if you know that it's been a weak spot in your marriage, be like, I think I can make this better next year. Whatever it is. Now, if it's strong and steady, keep it up. Don't backslide. Don't go backwards. Don't go the other way, but keep it up. Keep going. There's going to be areas in your life where everything's a-okay. You're getting an A. You're grading yourself and you're getting an A in that area. So now's not the time to just let up and be like, well, I'm doing so good in this area. I don't really need to pay attention next year to it. No, just keep going, keep doing better. Whether that comes to health, whether that comes to different aspects in your marriage, giving your husband enough quality time, spending time with him. The physical relationship is really good and he's satisfied and he's happy with it, so whatever it is. And remember, I'm talking to wives. I'm not talking to husbands. That's a whole different, that's not my area. I'm just telling you, wives, what has worked for me and my marriage and our home. And putting your husband's needs first is going to help blossom so many other areas of your life, believe me. So, but yeah, just think about your husband, then also your children. So, how is your relationship with your children? Now, I'm talking about, oh, there have been times in my life where I've been going to bed at night, right? Why is it always at night? When we're sitting there, we're laying there thinking, and my gut is telling me something isn't okay in this area. That could be in just how I'm running the home, my children's behavior, how they're talking to me, how they're talking to their dad, maybe how they're talking to their friends. Something is off and I feel it. And so I'll tell myself, okay, I need to improve this area. I'm not going to keep letting it slide. Like, I need to buckle down and do something about this. So oftentimes I'll get my husband involved. I'll talk to him, say, hey, listen, this has been lacking in this child's life. Like, this is the problem I've been having. And of course, he gives suggestions all the time because men are fixers. And so he's like, well, you can do this, whatever, do this, do this, do this. And we'll talk about it. And so then I make him aware of an issue because we are managing the home, but I like to keep my husband up to speed with what's going on with the kids because kids are going to go through different things at different times in their life too. They're going to go through different struggles. The ages for our boys, 19 to 21, was the most difficult when it came to just, it was a very uncertain time for them. And they were very, it was tough because they were coming into being men. And I don't believe God designed two men to be in the same household. And so there does come a time for a man, for a boy, when he reaches that age of 19 to 21, where he is developing physically, he's maturing mentally, and he's just ready for that next step. He needs his own family. And so 19 to 21 was always the hardest. And that is also the time when I prayed the most for my boys. I have found now that they're married, it's really leveled out and they're both doing great. Jason he just got a really good job. I'm not going to say what it is right now, but he can decide to tell people when he wants to tell people, but he's really becoming confident in who he is as a man now that he's married, and he just got a really good job. Same with Tommy. He has a really good job. He has a son now. And it's like night and day between the ages of 19 to 21 till what it is now. So, and then girls, they also kind of go through kind of a waiting period from the time they graduate high school till the time they, get married. I don't think it's as bad with girls as it was with my boys, because my girls aren't they don't butt heads with their dad. It's not like all this testosterone going head to head, right? So it's definitely different with boys and sons when it comes to that age. So there's going to be different seasons that our kids go through. For me, with the girls, actually the hardest time for me has been like 11 to 14. That's when girls are starting to change, like with emotions, and they're going through puberty, and they have struggled more than my boys did going through puberty. The boys struggled more when they were older. And so for me personally, that's a very trying time. So oftentimes I'll tell my husband this is going on, what can I do? And we'll kind of talk about it and brainstorm. And I pray a lot. I pray a lot. And so I do keep him up to speed with what's going on with our kids and like different seasons that they're going through. And I want to have a relationship with my kids at all ages. I don't want to get them to 18 and then be done. And I feel like the boomer generation really dropped the ball on this. And I know each generation has problems with the generation before it. So I have issues with the boomer generation. Overall, I feel like most of the ones that I have personally known fit into that stereotypical, I don't know, checklist, I guess. And they have to work really hard at not being the stereotypical way. And I'm sure what is it, Gen X? Am I Gen X? I can't remember. Millennials. I'm sure that I'm like right between, like, I think it's is it Gen Z, the one that is our kids now? I get them all mixed up, but I'm like right between millennial and I think Gen X. I think that's it. And I identify more Gen X than, I got to look it up now. I identify okay, I'm going to ask Chat GPT just a second here. What are the generations and what years are they? Like millennial, Generation X, etc. Okay, I'm going to ask ChatGPT. Okay, so the silent generation is 1928 through 1945. Baby boomers are 1946 through 1964. Gen X is 1960. Okay, so I had it right. 1965 through 1980. I was born in January of 81. So technically I'm a millennial, but I don't really fit the millennials. Millennial born 1981 through 1986, Gen Z 1997 through 2012, and Generation Alpha 2013 to present. So those are the generations. So I'm sure millennials will have an issue with Gen X. And then, Gen X, we have an issue with baby boomers. Baby boomers probably had an issue with the silent generation. But all that to say, I've seen how the baby boomers do relationships, and I don't want my relationships to be that way. With my kids, with my friends, with my husband, with any of them. I feel like they're a very selfish, entitled generation, and they are kind of narcissistic in a lot of ways. And so I don't want that with my own children. I didn't just have them to get them to 18 and kick them out of my house and then be done with them. No, I want to be a force in my grandchildren's lives. I want to be an influence in my adult kids' lives, even after they're married. So oftentimes you can kind of tell, and don't just write off everything that your kids say, even when they're younger. Kids are very honest. And so oftentimes they're not seeing things the way that they are, and they're building. You remember what it was like when you were a kid, right? Like everything was dramatized, everything was exaggerated. But sometimes there is a little bit of truth, and there might be a little bit of hurt in them, and you have to address that. So really try to get to the root of, maybe your 6-year-old says, "You never spend any time with me." And you're thinking, I bathe you, I do your hair, I feed you meals, but they're saying, you never spend any time with me. Maybe they're feeling overlooked. Maybe they need a little date. Maybe you need to take them to McDonald's and get the Grinch meal and sit there and talk with them and laugh with them. Maybe you need to play with them. We get so caught up in doing all of these basic necessities to keep them alive that we overlook the heart of the issue. And sometimes they just need us to snuggle with them, read them a book, watch a Christmas movie with them, and so listen to them. Obviously, we don't want to raise like spoiled kids who think that our entire life revolves around them. I'm not talking about that, but kids are very honest and they usually tell you what they need. So don't just write off everything that your adult kids tell you, Mom, you're always doing this. Well, are you? Is there an element of truth to it? Now, I always take when people give me criticisms, first of all, is this someone that I respect or looked up to? Yes. Okay. So what are they saying? Do I need to take a look at what they're saying? Am I really being this way? Or are they seeing things, just through their own life experiences and their own hurts and this in their mind, this is what I'm doing, but I'm really not trying to do this. I always take criticisms with a grain of salt. But first of all, if it's coming from someone who I have zero respect for, or I wouldn't want to be like them in any way, I don't care. Honestly, if it's coming from someone who I'm close to, a friend, my husband, my kids, someone from my church, if it's coming from those who I really care about, I'm going to, first of all, apologize if it's true and I've hurt them. Sometimes you can unintentionally hurt someone without knowing it. And you weren't doing it to be mean. You weren't doing it to be vindictive. Now there are mean girls out there, but hopefully you're not like that. I tend to think that if you're watching my show, you aren't. So because you want to be better in some areas. So, there are mean girls out there, but just look at what they're telling you and presenting with you. And if there's any truth, just apologize and say, you caught me at a bad moment, because we all have bad moments. I had a really bad day. I really didn't mean it that way. I'm sorry. I'll try to keep that in mind or whatever. So, there are ways that we can take constructive criticism. And then sometimes your kid is just having a bad day and they're going to say hurtful things because they know it's hurtful and they're trying to get a dig in. There's going to be days like that where you just need to maybe put them to bed earlier. Maybe you need to just give them a kiss and a cuddle and whatever. Because kids do tend to lash out if they're overtired or they're overstimulated. I've had a couple kids where they just they get overstimulated by new situations, and I just have to remove them from that situation, Hannah, and just de-escalate the situation before it gets even worse. And so with Hannah, you do have to do some de-escalation things because she tends to get very overstimulated. Kelly is the same way. Kelly tends to get tired very often. So sometimes it's just knowing where their line is, right? So yeah, bettering ourselves in our relationship with the Lord, bettering ourselves in our relationship with our husband, bettering ourselves in our relationship with our kids, and then bettering ourselves in our relationship with our church family, and I'm going to throw friends in there, too. There's ways that you can be better. I look back now, like we had a church split like 3 years ago or something, 3 or 4 years ago. And I look back and I'm thinking, why did I handle things this way? I could have, because you get caught up in the emotion, you get caught up in the heat of the moment. And since that time, I've read more books about communication. I've read more books about just Jefferson Fisher is really good for talking about communicating different things like this. And I've read ways that you can de-escalate situations rather than escalating situations. And so I look back and I cringe a lot at maybe some things that I said, maybe some things I should have said, maybe some things I shouldn't have said. And I'm thinking I could have handled this better. I could have handled this better. And then I look at things and I'm like, I handled that the best I could with what was going on in the moment, because things can be a really nasty situation. And sometimes you just have to keep your mouth shut and just pray and cry about it. And that's all you can do. But my intention is going forward, every year I'm going to be better at de-escalating situations, at communicating better with people, communicating better even when I have a problem with something that's going on, because there will be times where you have to learn how to be gracious with people without letting people walk all over you, because people will get away with what you allow them to get away with. If you establish no boundaries, they will do to you what you allow. And so there are times where you can put your foot down, but without being nasty, without making personal attacks, without being passive aggressive, just being honest with them in a kind way. Listen, when you act this way, it makes me feel this way. When you do this, it makes me feel this way. When you say this, it makes me feel this way. And then one of the biggest things I've learned through being in ministry is different areas which are in my control and different areas which are not. My family and my kids are mine to control, to be over, have authority over, etc. Other people's families and kids are not. If someone else's kid is acting up, that's not my problem. I don't need to fix it. I don't need to control it. I don't need to say anything about it. I don't need to make passive aggressive comments about it. Not my problem, right? Not my circus, not my monkeys. If someone else's husband is being a jerk, that's not my problem. I'm not married to that man. I don't need to fix it. If another lady in the church is being a jerk, not my problem. That's on them. That's their problem. They have to fix it. I can't fix every little problem that's going on. I can't fix every friendship. I can't fix everyone's thoughts or what they're thinking. I can't control other people's thoughts. That's not my problem. That's on them. I have to worry about myself and my marriage and my children. That's all I have to worry about. And so when you learn, like, this is my area of control and this is not my area of control, that helps so much when it comes to relationships and getting along with people. And we have to learn to just let people be who they are, because there's so many of us that are just trying to control other people and control how they react to situations and control like how they do this or how they say this, or it's not our area to control it. And so when you learn that different areas are yours to control and different areas are not, then you're a lot happier of a person. So, and you don't sit around worrying about other people and worrying about what this person's doing or worrying about what that person's doing, or being the clothing police in the church, or tattling about this family to the pastor, or, gossiping about this person to other. You can genuinely love people and want the best for them and not be in competition with them, and just let them be them. You can get to that point. And that's where real unity is in a church. Unity is not picking each other apart behind each other's backs. It's not, bashing someone else to make you feel better. It's not tattletelling. It's not, being judgmental. Real unity is just letting go of that which is not yours to control and letting people be who they are. Okay. Problems and all, because we all have problems. Bad days and all, because we all have bad days. It's learning that if they just give you a simple yes answer or no answer, and that's where it stops. You don't need to dig for more information. That's okay. That's what they're willing to tell me. Right. So I think a lot of problems in relationships would be solved if we just learned what was our problem to deal with and what was not our problem to deal with. And obviously within our sphere of our home, that's our jurisdiction. And then when it comes to church, if the pastor has put you over a ministry, that might be your jurisdiction, but maybe you're in charge of the music ministry, but you're not in charge of the cleaning ministry. So it's not the music minister's job to go, get involved in the cleaning ministry. Is there a cleaning minister? I don't know, janitor's job. I don't know. Whatever your area is within the church, is all parts of the body working together. And there's lots of Bible verses about that. So it's just all parts of the body. It's not the hand telling the foot, why are you doing that? It's the hand doing what it's supposed to do and the foot doing what it's supposed to do. So Exactly, Sarah. Praise the Lord. It's not our job to care for others' problems. And I do agree. She said, I love how men have a different perspective. Aaron has been able to solve problems that I'm at my wits' end. Yes, my husband will throw out solutions, and I'm like, that's so easy. Why didn't I think of that? Like, that's so easy because men have different brains than us women do. We think so much is emotion where I am more like when it comes to making decisions, I'm more logic and fact based than most women, but I'm still different than my husband. I obviously, a lot of times he will just be ready to go to war. Right. And I'm like, well, maybe they had a bad day. I tend to like try to give more grace and just we need to forgive. They didn't mean it, let's give them the benefit of the doubt, you know. And so us women, we tend to be more that way where our husbands are the warriors, right? Like they want to go to war, but we're like kind of, but it's good to have both perspectives. Sometimes there needs to be war, sometimes there needs to be peace. And so I think that's why men and women together are such a dynamic duo. It's the perfect plan because God planned it that way. We're supposed to have both of those, parts of in a working home. So, anyways, I think that's about all I'll do tonight. I did it without an outline. It was weird because I lost my train of thought a lot. That's why I like having an outline because it keeps me like, okay, I'm going to talk about this next and this next and this next. I kind of lost my train of thought with a lot of these things, but hopefully it was a help to you. My encouragement for you as moms and wives and friends and members of a church would be to just let's better ourselves. Let's pick out some weaknesses. Maybe we can't work on all of our weaknesses in 2026, but let's pick out one or two and let's be like, okay, I'm going to do this better in my marriage. I'm going to do this better with my children. Maybe it's more one on one time with them. Maybe it's less yelling. Maybe it's less just freaking out about the house and how dirty it is or whatever. Maybe it is freaking out a little bit more about the house and putting a cleaning routine in place. We know our own weaknesses. We know ourselves the best. I know one of my big projects that I'm going to do when I am on break next week from school and lessons is I'm organizing my closet because there's been a couple comments made about that and it is a mess right now. Things tend to pile up in there. And so I'm going to take the bull by the horns and I'm going to get that done, so we know the weak spots. We know what is lacking. So let's just try to do better. Let's try to do better in our relationship with our Lord. Let's try to grow in 2026 and not go backwards. Let's not be a more backslidden Christian than this year. Let's be a more on fire Christian. Let's not be a more pathetic wife. Let's be a better wife. Let's see to more of our husband's needs. Let's get better at different things. Does he want to go on more dates? Does he want more, physical affection? Does he want more quality time? Does he want more words of affirmation? Does he, want you to clean out your closet? What does he want? Just ask him, what do you want? What do you want for us in 2026? And then with our kids, developing a relationship with our kids, and then even with our friends and our church, let's be better members. Let's be more involved. Let's, go more soul winning. Let's get involved in more ministries. Let's be at every church service in 2026, barring puking flu or something. Let's be better in 2026. Let's not get worse. So that is my charge and my exhortation for all of you. And just go home this week and, love God, love your husband, and love your kids and love them well. And we will see you guys next week.